This is Danny, and he's got a huge problem. See, Danny's lived in the same small town his whole life. Nice place, quiet, the kind of town where nothing much changes. Until last year, when the county broke ground on something huge just outside city limits. A massive windowless building surrounded by fencing and cooling towers. The county called it a server farm. The company building it called it critical digital infrastructure. Danny just called it the new construction site down the road. And at first, it seemed like great news. Hundreds of temporary construction jobs, a promise of new tax revenue, even a press release from the mayor thanking the company for investing in our community's future. Danny didn't think twice about it. Why would he? A shiny new building bringing money into town sounds like a win for everybody. But then, a few months after the facility switched on, something strange started happening. Danny's tap water pressure dropped. Not a lot at first, just enough to notice. Then his water bill went up. Then the city sent out a notice asking residents to voluntarily cut back on lawn watering and car washing due to temporary supply constraints. Temporary supply constraints. In a town that's never had a water shortage in its entire recorded history. Danny starts asking around, and it turns out he's not the only one. Neighbors are noticing the same pressure drops, the same higher bills, and nobody at the city seems to want to give a straight answer about why. So Danny starts digging, and the deeper he looks, the more one building keeps showing up in every version of the story: the data center. This is the AI water crisis explained. But first, we need to understand what's actually happening inside that windowless building and why it's so thirsty in the first place. AI doesn't run on vibes. It runs on massive banks of computer chips called GPUs, racked floor to ceiling inside data centers, running around the clock to train and operate models like the ones powering chatbots, image generators, and search tools you've probably used yourself. And those chips generate an enormous amount of heat. Enough heat that if you don't cool them constantly, they fail. So data centers use industrial cooling systems, and a huge share of those systems rely on one thing above all else: water. Lots of it. Some facilities use water evaporatively, meaning the water doesn't come back. It just evaporates into the air as part of the cooling cycle. Gone. Not returned to the local supply. According to researchers who've studied this, training a single large language model can consume hundreds of thousands of gallons of water. And running the model afterward, every single query, every single prompt, carries its own tiny water cost too, one that adds up fast at the scale companies are operating. Some independent estimates suggest that a modest number of AI chatbot conversations can consume the equivalent of a bottle of water, multiplied across billions of queries a day, worldwide. If you're finding this explanation valuable, hit that subscribe button right now. It takes 1 second, but it helps us expose more hidden realities like this. So, on paper, this sounds like a manageable cost of doing business, right? A little water here and there for cutting-edge technology. Except here's where it gets interesting. Because these companies aren't building these facilities evenly across the map. Investigations by journalists and researchers have found that a disproportionate number of new data centers are being built in water-stressed regions, places already dealing with drought, aquifer depletion, or agricultural water conflicts. Why would you build one of the thirstiest structures on the planet in one of the driest regions on the planet? Simple. Land is cheap, regulations are looser, and local governments, desperate for jobs and tax revenue, are often willing to offer massive incentives to get the deal done. Which brings us to the part of the story that should really get under your skin. Because in town after town, when local reporters or residents ask exactly how much water these facilities are actually using, they hit a wall. Some companies have successfully argued that their water usage numbers count as a trade secret. Not a typo. Trade secret. Confidential business information protected from public disclosure. The same category you'd use to protect a proprietary recipe or a chip design. Except this isn't a recipe. This is the same water that comes out of Danny's tap. Think about that for a second. A private company can build a facility in your town, tap into your shared water supply and then legally refuse to tell you, the person paying for water restrictions, exactly how much of that water they're using. If Danny wanted to install a slightly bigger swimming pool, he'd have to file paperwork with the city. But a facility drawing potentially millions of gallons gets to call its usage a secret.
Doesn't seem like a level playing field, does it? And it gets worse, because in several documented cases across the US, local governments have granted these companies contracts guaranteeing them water access even during drought conditions, while regular residents faced mandatory restrictions on their own usage. In one widely reported case in the American Southwest, a data center secured a water allocation contract that locked in its supply for years, while nearby residents were asked to let their lawns die and cut showers short during a historic drought. One side got a guaranteed pipeline. The other side got a pamphlet about conservation. So who's actually paying for all this? On the surface, everybody wins. The company gets cheap land, tax breaks, and water access. The local government gets jobs and revenue. But scratch a little deeper, and it's the Dannys of the world quietly absorbing the real cost. Higher water bills to cover infrastructure upgrades needed to support the new demand. Restrictions on their own use, while a nearby facility burns through supply protected as confidential. And in some cases, permanently degraded local water tables that don't recover even after the drought technically ends. And remember, this isn't a one-time cost. These facilities don't stop being thirsty once they're built. As AI companies race to build bigger models, and bigger models need more computing power, the water and energy demand isn't shrinking, it's compounding. Some projections estimate that global data center water consumption could rival the annual water withdrawal of entire small countries within just a few years if current trends hold. And here's the part that should really make you pause. Companies love to publish sustainability reports celebrating water efficiency improvements per facility, fewer gallons per unit of computing power than a few years ago. Genuinely a real improvement in some cases. But that's a bit like a car company bragging about better gas mileage while selling 10 times as many cars.
The efficiency gain gets swallowed whole by the sheer scale of expansion. More facilities, more chips, more queries, more everything, all built faster than efficiency gains can offset. So the headline number goes down while the actual total water consumed keeps climbing. Which leaves us with an uncomfortable question. Is this actually about efficiency? Or is it about optics? Meanwhile, back in Danny's town, the mayor's office insists everything is under control. The data center company insists it's a good neighbor, committed to sustainability, and points to a modest local reforestation initiative as proof of its environmental commitment. Which sounds nice, right up until you realize planting a few trees doesn't exactly refill an aquifer. And Danny, for his part, still doesn't have full water pressure back. He still can't get a straight answer on exactly how many gallons that windowless building down the road is pulling out of the ground every single day. All he has is a rate hike, a watering restriction notice, and a company that's allowed to call the actual number a secret. So the next time a shiny new AI facility breaks ground in some quiet town promising jobs and progress, you'll know what to actually ask. Not how many jobs, not how much tax revenue. Ask how much water. And ask why that number, unlike everything else about the deal, so often gets locked away where nobody can see it. Stay sharp out there, and we'll see you in the next one.